Hi there, this is Brent.
And this is Amanda.
We are the Unreliable Narrators.
Here to talk about the strangeness, the mystery, and the wonder of Gene Wolfe's prose.
What is time?
What is memory?
What is a person?
Is this reality?
Where are we?
Do we exist?
Have you ever considered that all your choices are what brought you right here to this very moment?
Episode number 38, Wolfer. Originally published in 1997's anthology Wild Women, and then republished and collected in 2004's Innocents Aboard.
Yes, the wolf story that almost made me quit reading Wolfe.
Are you serious? That's quite dramatic.
It is, but the subject matter touches on something that personal, and we had to deal with growing up. So. Yeah,
when you said you wanted to discuss this one, I had to laugh because it's definitely I really like it as a Wolfe story for its connections to his concerns about his own last name. And also just because it's an interesting subject. But being that we live in the West, we certainly have personal experience with the reintroduction of wolves into the wild in the 1990s.
Yeah. And I feel like I've gone through the full emotional arc where I'm now like, okay, yeah, this was the better option. Like, this was a good idea.
The reintroduction of wolves.
Yeah.
But growing up, you were definitely in a cultural environment that was anti-wolf reintroduction.
Oh, yeah. My grandpa was very anti-wolf reintroduction, but then he came around to it. So, all
right. So let me just give a quick summary of the story, and then let's talk a little bit more about the West and wolf reintroduction. Okay. So Wolfer is about a woman who, after her recent divorce, is interested in the origin of her maiden name, Wolfer. She attends a lecture on the origins of last names, and in conflict with the lecturer, claims that her ancestors must have been servants of the wolf and not wolfish in character, because he presents a couple of different possibilities for last name origins, one of which is servant of, like bishop, servant of the bishop, noble, servant of the noble. But then he claims that her ancestors must have been wolfish, and she completely disagrees. As a result of her argument with him, she gets recruited by an underground group who are attempting to re-release wolves into American parks and forests. And so she ends up taking three young wolves, to Michigan, and she's caught by a park ranger as she releases them. She's successful, though, and the ranger who catches her, she threatens him with a gun, but he also seems sympathetic to her cause. And the story ends with her heading to Texas, apparently to continue attempting to serve the wolves.
Yeah.
So that's Wolfer.
Yeah.
So I recall hearing about Wolfe reintroduction when I was in my early teens, because it was a question of national policy. The groundwork had been laid via the Endangered Species Act in the 70s. But by the 90s, there was a pretty serious campaign to reintroduce wolves specifically into Yellowstone, as well as into the rest of the West. And I believe it's 95 when they released captured Canadian wolves into Yellowstone National Park, which incidentally, we're from Idaho, and Yellowstone does actually include a small portion of the state of Idaho. Very tiny sliver of it, which is politically and legally interesting little slice of the wild. But, national parks, in case you don't know, don't have fences around them. And Idaho is a large and open state, and we have a lot of wild land, and we also have a lot of cattle ranchers and farmers. And so the introduction of a predatory species was extremely controversial. You still occasionally see bumper stickers on big old pickup trucks that say wolves smoke a pack a day, which is about shooting them. The main arguments I heard against it were that, they're just going to kill our cows. So it's going to be very bad for livestock. I also heard arguments that they would cause our hunting species, so our deer and elk populations, to seriously decline, which would be a negative for hunters. And then I also heard the argument that they introduced Canadian wolves, and Canadian wolves are completely different than the native wolves would have been. They're much larger and much more aggressive, and therefore it was ill-considered and ill-conceived because they weren't even reintroducing a native species. They were reintroducing much larger wolves than would have been in Yellowstone in the first place. So that's what I recall from the 90s.
Yeah, and I've seen plenty of wolves out in the wild, and I've seen the smaller, because the ones that we did have native here were smaller, and I think a lot of people mistook them for coyotes.
Right.
But then I've seen a lot of the ones that they introduced. I see them like every hunting season.
Yeah.
I'm highly skeptical of people that are like, oh, I don't see wolves anywhere. And I'm like, are you just driving around on your four-wheeler?
Well, I think that is actually a lot the case for people who think of themselves as enjoying the wild. They're in a vehicle of some sort or another the vast majority of the time, and therefore they're only on roads or very wide trails, and they're making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So I've seen wolves in the wild. I spent a good portion of my childhood up in northern Idaho, which is pretty much Canada, and those forests are continuous and thick. And, I remember, this is not about wolves, but bears. I remember hearing people talk about how there definitely weren't grizzly bears in those forests, and grizzlies needed to be reintroduced. And, I don't know the grounding of these conversations or the thrust of them, but there are definitely grizzlies in those forests.
Yeah.
And there's so much wildland that you could have many packs of wolves. And many grizzly bears, and no one would know.
We dealt specifically with, I say we, my family. So we were ranchers and farmers. Well, we still are, but but so back in the 90s, there was a group of people who had captive wolves, and they were crossbreeding them.
Yes.
With dogs, but then they also had captive coyotes.
Yes.
And so what they were doing is they were releasing these hybrid critters on our property and on the forest behind our land. And the problem with them is if they have the dog in them, they don't fear people.
Yeah.
And then where they're a hybrid, oftentimes they're much bigger.
Yes. That hybrid vigor.
Yeah. And so like they would come right up to you.
Yeah.
But then they were also somewhat aggressive towards people.
So the worst of both worlds. They're not skittish of people, but they do have wolfish aggressiveness.
Yeah.
Not
and then
domesticated.
The other thing that was going on is they were, so you get the half coyote ones. And so coyotes don't really run in packs. I mean, maybe there's areas where they do, but they don't.
They're not pack hunting animals. They're scavengers.
Yeah, more solitary type. But these hybrid ones, they would kill off the male coyotes.
Yep.
And then they would kind of bring the pack mentality to the female coyotes. And so we were actually working with Fish and Game because Fish and Game didn't want the dog DNA into, because they're like, well,
into the wild.
Yeah, because we're like, if we're going to reintroduce wolves, like we're going to have these aggressive ones in here.
Right.
And when I say aggressive, these were literally hunting the cattle.
Yes.
And they would come up to you and because they had no fear of you.
A real danger to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, we ended up shooting like 40 or 50 of them one year because they would come by and they would just dump out like 10 at a time.
So what were these people's motivation for doing this?
They wanted to reintroduce wolves, but they were really big on the idea of wolves.
Right.
But then it's kind of like Tiger King.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, it's like, oh, wow, this is a disaster waiting to happen.
Right.
It's like, you could argue like, oh yeah, these people really love big cats.
But they don't. They love the idea of the big cat, not the actuality of the big cat. A big cat needs a jungle, a forest, prey to hunt,
Yeah.
an active life, mates, not to be caged and pet by somebody who likes the image that they bring.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I had an acquaintance as a young adult who was very into the imagery and idea of the wolf in all of the weird modern ways, for sure, that the semi-furry community silliness, like wearing a tail kind of thing. But also one of the things that they wanted was to own a wolf. And so they purchased a wolf husky hybrid. And that's bad on so many levels.
Yeah.
Huskies are not pets. They are working dogs.
Yeah.
They are domesticated, but they are working dogs. I feel this way about people owning shepherd species as pets in the city. You have an animal that has, a working genome and needs stimulation and activity.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a husky and a wolf hybrid where you have, it's a half wild, and it may have only been a quarter wolf, but it's a very large, very active, not fully domesticated animal. And this person was absolutely heartbroken and angry when their spouse required them to get rid of the dog wolf hybrid when they had infants. They had babies, human babies.
Yeah.
The couple had children.
Okay.
And, the spouse considered this far too dangerous to have around their infants. And, it's very strange because you like the image or the idea of the thing. You like the archetype of the wild wolf, but an archetype is not a living creature.
Yeah.
And a myth is not a domestic situation. And so, yeah, I'm very uncomfortable with that, because I grew up in the wild, in the forest, and the imagery of the eagle, the wolf, the bear, that's all very significant in my imaginative world, but you do not want a grizzly bear in your house.
No.
Yeah. So you said you had a really hard time with this when you first read it because growing up in that context, all of this conflict, the actual problems that you were dealing with, these people ignorantly, and the protagonist of the story, she is ignorant. She doesn't understand wolves, but she has this sense that she is supposed to serve them. And so she could be doing great damage and not knowing it.
Yeah. I've since come around to it's a good thing for the wolves to be reintroduced.
Yeah.
The protagonist here, Janet, was very haphazard.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's more by luck than by skill that she navigates this.
Right.
So
growing up, I had a lot of that negative perspective, but I came around on my opinion about whether it was good or bad to have wolves in the wild just because of what actually happened in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
So they reintroduced wolves. They selected wolves from various Canadian packs. They didn't transport an existing pack, as I understand it, but they culled some wolves, some healthy wolves from different packs, probably to provide genetic diversity and also to not too seriously disrupt the situation where the wolves came from.
Yeah.
Introduced them into Yellowstone, and it actually didn't take very long for them to establish a healthy breeding population. And you can read some very effusive accounts of this, but even on a sober consideration of what happened, the wolves transformed and improved the ecosystem of Yellowstone very dramatically in a very short period of time. So this has been 30 years. And it was evident within a decade that the reintroduced wolves improved the health of the river ecosystem, improved the health of the other populations of animals, and not just the obvious ones. Very non-obvious animal populations were affected by the introduction of the wolves. And so, yeah, it is specifically in the Yellowstone context, but also in places where are wild lands and wild populations of herd animals, having apex predators present and healthy is overall good for the system. It's bad for the individual rancher who loses calves, but on the whole, it seems so profoundly healthy that it is a good thing, even though there are going to be difficult interfaces. So
yeah. Well, and part of it too is everybody's assumptions going in were likely incorrect. And the fact that wolves were a part of a healthy ecosystem, I think one of the things that kicked off for me was, okay, well, how do humans, as modern humans, we don't think of ourselves as part of an ecosystem.
So this is a theme. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We think of ourselves as outside nature.
And so then it's like, how do we begin to think of ourselves as actors in an ecosystem? Because most people don't think of a city as an ecosystem, but it is. It's a highly artificial and manufactured one. And, there's arguments for and against that. Like pigeons love it.
Yeah. Works really well for pigeons, pretty well for raccoons.
Yeah.
Rats love it.
Yeah. But then at the same time, it's not exactly healthy in terms of biodiversity.
Right.
So there's, I think it's a kind of you need to think about it in terms of like, okay, well, if the wolves have a spot, then it's like, maybe we have a spot that's not quite the spot that we imagine. Like,
right.
Maybe cramming humans into cubicles and small little apartments isn't exactly the way that we should be living.
Yeah. No, and I do remember thinking about humans as part of an ecosystem, specifically in this context, because one of the arguments that was advanced by the people I was around who were opponents of reintroduction of wolves is that we have replaced the wolves as an apex predator. And so, I grew up hunting and surrounded by people who hunt, and we harvest, kill, get a lot of animals each year, just collectively as a group. There, we'd fill our tags, and that's deer and elk and moose, depending on the year and our luck, that fed us, which was helpful, but also does have an effect on the deer populations. And so there are places where, especially back east, where the deer populations are they're very unhealthy because there are too many animals. There isn't enough hunting pressure on them, and they are not healthy individually as animals or as a population because of overcrowding and no pressures on their breeding cycle. I thought of humans as the apex predator that could replace, we killed the wolves, but we also took their job. Well, there are lots of parts of their job that we're just not good at. So one of the things that happened in Yellowstone is that the pressure of the wolves on the elk herds did reduce them in size, which was significant for the willow species that grow along the riverbanks, because huge herds of elk browsing along the riverbank, they browse down those chutes, and then the willows don't grow up and it doesn't stabilize the riverbank. So you don't get the same riparian interface that you would in a natural system.
Yeah.
So the rivers were healthier because the elk couldn't just linger by the riverside and browse contentedly, because the wolf pack might be hunting them. So they had to move more quickly through the landscape, which allowed more willow to survive, which allowed a rebound in the beaver population in Yellowstone. They went from one breeding pair to 9 in one region because the willow could grow and the beaver could eat the willow. The coyote populations in Yellowstone went down, both because wolves will kill coyotes, but also because the wolves were hunting the elk. The elk populations were healthier, which meant that mere coyotes couldn't pull them down so easily or have as much to scavenge from those that died of natural causes, that kind of thing. The coyote population going down allowed the fox population to go up because coyotes and foxes compete for a lot of the same prey. So just all of these effects that as humans, we have intelligence and planning capacity and tool-making skills, but we don't have the knowledge that it takes to understand all of these second, third, fourth order effects of a species. And so we think we understand certain things, and there are lots of things we do understand, but if we're going to participate as actors in an ecosystem, we have to be, our role is to be far more attentive and far less violent in our It's the late 1800s, the early 1900s. Let's shoot all the wolves kind of decision making.
Yeah.
Like, let's pile up bison carcasses on the plains. Surely this will be fine, right? We'll just make a mountain out of bison skulls. Look at how cool we are. We have to be less aggressive, more attentive, but then also recognize that we do function as part of this.
Yeah.
So
I think this was a long preamble for all the themes that are actually gonna.
Yes, for the actual story.
Yeah, I have some questions I want to ask you, but they probably make more sense in the context of the story. So I'll wait till
not just our opinionated ramblings about wolves. Are they good or are they bad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the story starts out with our protagonist, Janet Wolfer, attending a lecture. And I don't like the lecturer. Do you?
I don't like him either.
Okay, he's very pontificate-y. Wolfe doesn't really describe it, but he's giving a lecture on the origins of names, and then he invites members of the audience to tell him their last names because he will know where their last name came from, unless it's Eastern European in origin.
I find this interesting because there's names in Wolfe mean a lot.
Yes.
And so now I'm like, oh, great. Now here's another word. Onomastics.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the study of names.
Yes.
And their meaning. So this is this guy's field of research.
Right.
And like you said, he comes across as more assertive and more knowing than he likely is in reality.
Right.
Because he has a couple of points where it's like, if you have the last name of Smith, it's like you probably had an ancestor.
Right. Who was in the smithing trade.
Yeah. It's like, that makes sense. And he runs through a lot of the different, like you have names that are professions, you have names that are place names.
Right.
You have names that are, it's like somebody who, like their distinguishing characteristics of their physical nature.
Right.
But yeah, he's kind of just a little.
Yeah. And I kind of get it because it's, this is his specialty. He's giving a popular lecture on an academic topic. And there's the performative aspect of it, which is, yes, there are unexpected things about my area of knowledge that are taken for granted within the context of my profession, but would be surprising to somebody who isn't in the profession. So like, what's the surprising thing about what you do for a living that no one would think? And so his big reveal is that there are last names that sound like your ancestors had this profession, but actually your ancestor was a servant to that profession. So one of the characters' last name is Bishop. It's like, no, you're not descended from a bishop. You're descended from probably a high-level servant to the bishop, because it would be John who serves the bishop, becomes John Bishop, becomes your last name. The way it's presented in the story, it's kind of like see, this is secret. You didn't know this.
Yeah.
And then he goes on the big example of Barnes and Noble. So the booksellers, Barnes and Noble. And Noble is probably descended from somebody who was a servant to the local noble. So not actually of noble origin, but servant to the noble. But Barnes could have been somebody who lived near a barn or who built barns, but is more likely Scottish, and bairn, which is child, and so may have actually been bairn of the lord or the noble. So Barnes may be noble in origin, and Noble may have been servant of Noble. So I mean, it's fun, but the way that the lecturer is written, he just sounds pontificate and frustrating.
Yeah.
So,
and I think we're supposed to feel that way. The point of Capricorn is one of the ones where I'm thinking where it's like bonfires and bonefires. Wolfe would sometimes, as much as he played with folk etymologies,
right,
he also got irritated at people that like propagated false folk etymologies.
Right.
And I think about this, and then it's like, well, you have Alden Weir thinking about that. Oh, this is where brand new comes from, because it's still got the brand name on the axe. And that's if you read that straight, you're like, oh, I learned something, but it's like, no, you didn't. Like he's misunderstanding how these things work, and that's not. So it's like it's a folk etymology there, and I think part of it is like Wolfe is also saying that like just because you have specialized knowledge, you can fall into these same pitfalls.
Right. And Wolfe plays with that in a variety of places and seems to have an interestingly complex relationship to academic knowledge, where he is deeply knowledgeable in traditional academic subjects that he didn't study as an academic, but also has an actual expert's understanding of the difference between amateur knowledge and professional knowledge, because as an engineer, he has professional knowledge of complex things that are invisible to non-engineering minds. So there seems to be a tension in a lot of his work between this is highly specialized knowledge that I acquired as an amateur versus this is a professional's knowledge.
Yeah. What do you think about our main character having the last name of Wolfer? A wolf.
Well, so of course the first thing I think about is Why Private War?
Yes.
That's the Now We Are Sick collection, isn't it? My books are all packed up right now, so I was having a hard time. I had to open 3 boxes just to find my copy of Innocents Aboard. So I couldn't dig it out to check it. But Wolfe was interested. We talked about this when we discussed the poem, but also we had some correspondence with another Wolfe scholar talking about it a little bit, that he was curious about what it was that caused his ancestor to get the last name Wolfe. Was it wolfish character? What's going on? So this seems to be at least something of an exploration, or maybe a little bit of an exorcism of that fear. Like, was my ancestor a wolfish, vicious, aggressive man, or was he a servant to the wolf? Could that have been? Is that a thing? Can you do that?
Yeah, it's fun. You went exactly where I was going, because I wanted to bring up
well, that's because we've been there before, so we went back the same spot.
Yeah, because when I was looking it up, I hate the world we've created, because it's like just a bunch of trash web pages and crappy etymologies. But reading through some older books, like the last name Wolf and all the general variations of it seems to be Germanic in origin. And it's old enough, so it was attached to a lot of names. It was in the name. And part of that, one of the authors was theorizing, is because wolves were sacred to Odin.
Yeah.
And so that's partially, they were thinking, how it got started. But then it became such a large part of Germanic culture that by the time that the Germanic peoples were Christianized, it wasn't something that was viewed as specifically a pagan thing. It was just part of the culture. So it wasn't It wasn't like, oh, well, we need to rename everybody because it's
right. It's not like the name of the gods. It was disassociated enough and generalized enough that it made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where Janet Wolfe is saying that, oh, I think my ancestors may have been servants of the wolves. Like, some people, like the etymology of the surname, they're like, well, yeah, it could be, because if wolves were sacred to the god of these people, it would make sense.
Right.
Because then you're viewing like, oh, these are messengers, these are sacred animals. So
yeah, that's interesting to think about, because to be a servant of the gods, not that that's ever come up in any wolf story before, but puts a layer on it where Janet Wolfe is looking to serve the wolves directly. She's looking to connect to this is a wild animal that needs to be cared for kind of situation, but there'd be a larger mythological and religious background of the animals are sacred to the gods. Well, and sort of a eco-Christian perspective on caring for the wild, or caring for the land, or even just caring for the ecosystem of the city is caring for God's creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are in Janet's perspective.
Yes.
She is recently divorced.
Yeah.
I liked the way that the outline was sketched, where her ex-husband's Steve.
Yes.
And she she gets irritated because Steve's always talking about the good times.
Yes. And she says, they weren't good for me.
Yeah, they weren't good for me. So it's like Steve seems to have a lack of understanding of her.
Yes.
And because of this, she's rather timid.
Yeah.
And so we're in her perspective, but she has a bit of a confrontation with this lecturer.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cringe inducing because I've been in what I was reminded of. There was a time, actually, I think you may have been in this class in college
I may well
with
have
me.
Been.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, when we were in the astronomy class.
Yes.
And there was a guy, I didn't know him directly, but he was in the...
Yes, and he was very, very on edge.
Yeah, and so he got up and was asking the professor, like, why aren't you teaching astronomy from like a Genesis creation point of view?
Right. Why are you claiming that this is so old when it couldn't be?
Yeah.
Or why aren't you at least acknowledging that this is a equal perspective?
And the professor, he was such an awkward guy, but he was like trying to handle it very well. And he was and I remember he said something along the lines of like, well, like it kind of ended with like, well, if God didn't want us to think that, like, why did he create like light the way it is and like the expansion of the universe?
Yeah, my memory, he was very gracious and wasn't like you're an idiot, but he raised questions that this guy would have to answer if he wanted to insist that the universe was 6,000 years old.
Yeah, and the astronomer was like, the university offers classes on religion, on Christianity, on comparative religions,
right? Like
on interpretation. Like there's a literature department too. And he was like, but I'm only approaching this from like, this is what we can test and kind of.
This is how the math works kind of perspective. Yeah.
And and I just remember I was like, okay, this is so cringe inducing. Because on one hand, it's like, I'm a Christian. So it's like, but at the same time, it's like, well, I don't have like the same young earth creation perspective that he had. And I'm like, I'm just trying to learn about the astronomy here.
Right.
And it was like a 10 or 15 minute long.
No, and as I recall it, you said cringe, and that is that intense feeling of embarrassment and uncertainty and shame because someone is doing something that is outside the bounds of socially appropriate behavior, but also doing it for these just intense and sincere and deep beliefs that do not entirely fail to align with my intense beliefs, but because I was very much raised in the young earth creation. This is the thing that you must believe. If you give this up, you're giving up the whole thing, and you might as well just deny the Holy Ghost right now and go to hell. So I was very much raised in that world, and I don't know, we were like 21 in college in this class, and I didn't know what to make of this is how they're presenting it. And I had been told over and over again that that's false and bad and wrong. And that doing what this young man did would have been the right thing to do, to stand up and defend the faith. And then the professor's like, well, this is the best I can understand it from this perspective. And this is the perspective that I believe best explains the phenomenon, and maybe ask yourself why it looks like this if that's not the case. And also go and explore the philosophy, the philosophical underpinnings of how you know things before you start getting into a conflict over, the way light works.
Yeah.
So that's how it feels reading that scene. She gets up and she's like, it's her perspective, and she knows she's shrill. She knows it's uncomfortable for everyone around her. She knows that the professor must be saying something crushing back to her, but she's so in her emotions, she can't hear him. Yeah. And she needed to, so this is so interesting because she's gone through such a traumatic experience to go through a divorce. It's very fresh. She is very angry. Yeah. She doesn't know how to process her anger. And of course, she's gone back to her maiden name, which is interesting and symbolic that, Steve, her ex, didn't understand her and thought things were good. And she's trying to figure out who is she?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is exploring her name. Who am I? Who do I want to be? I was angry and violent enough to throw a heavy cast iron pan at a dog.
Yeah.
Which is, and so then I took 2 weeks off work because I need to figure my stuff out. And so here I am, arguing pointlessly with a professor, but also it's pointless in a larger context, but it's incredibly pointed for her interior sense of self.
And I just felt like, sorry, I'm arguing against an imaginary internet user at the moment.
Oh, okay, go for it.
Well, because people often complain about the way Wolfe writes women. I feel like over the years, I've known this person.
Yeah.
She rings true to me, in the sense that she knows because it talks about how she hears the people murmuring and talking around her, but then she's like, but I'm just trying. It's gets so focused on this one thing and it's kind of I'm trying to say something, but nobody's.
Yeah.
And so that, I don't know, maybe.
Well, I'm just going to make a big declaration here that, oh yeah. No, I think that it is misogynistic to think that a portrayal of a woman that includes what seems like irrational behavior is some kind of negative judgment about women or people. I'm portraying a character acting in a way that's less than perfectly rational, but is also explicable within her emotional and social context and is part of her growth as a human being. I mean, that's human and real. Women and men, we do not have to be in charge, on top of things, perfectly socially acceptable or perfectly rational or perfectly calm or perfectly good at all times. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, the portrayal of a person going through an intense experience and doing something that's strange, cringe, weird. Even our guy back in astronomy class, look, I think that it's good that he did that. Not that I think that his purpose and his understanding of what he was doing was necessarily perfectly healthy and good, but he needed to go through the process of standing up and saying, this is what I believe. And hopefully if he was open to growing as a person, that professors' questions to him, maybe he still believes young earth creation, that's fine, but maybe he believes it with more humility and more understanding than he did before. And that is a perfectly valid way to exist as a human being. So
you started this like it was going to be a hot take that I could disagree with, and
no.
I'm wait, I totally agree with everything you just said. So,
well, no,
this doesn't seem controversial at all.
Well, of course not, but that's it. But I do think that kind of criticism of Wolfe's female characters is the discomfort with a nuanced, flawed portrayal is that I think that's very unhealthy. To be uncomfortable about that. It's much like I think that it's misandrist to act like men aren't capable of controlling their, sexual desires. That position that is actually a part of some patriarchal cultures, that women must be cloaked and hidden away because men can't control their lust. That's very anti-man. I don't understand people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to that point there, the a wolf being a term for sexually aggressive male.
Yeah.
One of the things, I have a note here that the first recorded instance of that isn't till 1847.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's now the other thing too, so interesting note, that's the first concrete one, but then part of me is well, you also have stories like Little Red Riding Hood,
right?
which predate that, which I think there's a valid reading there too, that the wolf is.
Well, there's a Jungian unconsciousness argument here that whether we had a recorded use of that terminology, there is it seems unreasonable to believe that that's not an archetypal reading of that. It's like, well, cougar as a term for an older sexually aggressive woman seems to be a relatively late coinage and does not seem to exist in myth and fairy tale before. But the big bad wolf and Little Red Riding Hood, that it's there. I think I think Jung would probably be like, well, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and that goes back thousands of years.
So the whole confrontation here, the thing that does come out of this is one of the ladies that the professor calls on. So it's Margaret Bishop.
Yes.
So because of Janet standing up and saying, I think I'm a servant of wolves, Margaret catches her as everybody's filing out and says, hey, meet me on the bus.
Yeah.
So this whole confrontation, while maybe not comfortable for everyone involved, it is kind of a key point for kicking off the rest of the events in our story.
Yeah, so the two women connect on the bus, and it reads very strangely because it doesn't seem like there is enough to go on here, but Margaret Bishop sure does press into it, and it works. So she's like, okay, you want to be a servant of the wolf. Well, look, there's a group of us and we're doing this. And you're exactly what we need. I'm delighted in you. You are like diamonds and rubies to me, which is so loaded here.
Yeah.
I mean, the layers of social, I don't know, social commentary, social implication. Well, a good wife who can find, she's more precious than rubies. So that's in scripture. And here she's been, rejected as a wife. Her husband kept trying to make her smaller and smaller and lock her up more and more.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes something people do with the things they deem precious, but is also something people do with things they want to control. And now this woman is, Margaret Bishop is like, you are precious to me because you're listening and you are willing to do what's asked of you. And Janet's like, she said, you're good. And she's like, well, I've always been trying to be good. Maybe I'm actually succeeding now. And Margaret Bishop is like, get a big vehicle. You have one, right? And then go and pick up these 3 wolves and from this person and then drive them to this place and don't tell anybody.
Yeah. So Steve's her ex-husband's
name.
And it was crown or garland or wreath, what seemed to be like the etymology of his name.
Yeah.
And I wasn't 100% sure what to do with that.
Neither was I.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of Steve. So my interpretation of him was turning more on his action in the story. So she goes to ask things of him because she doesn't actually have a large vehicle, but he does. He has a big SUV. And they're very recently divorced, and she goes and asks if she can borrow it.
Yeah. Like,
I'll give you my Geo Metro and I'll drive your SUV. And he complies. He's willing. So that I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that either.
And then to add another layer on here, she also asks him if she can borrow his Smith & Wesson. And he lets her take it.
Yeah, and she even says, like, I know I didn't like you having these before, but now I need one. Yeah, and there's a little bit of because he's kind of like, what? And well, these are big dogs that I'm...
Yeah. So she claims she's transporting dogs, but she doesn't say, and they're big dogs, and I'm a little scared, and I think I need to borrow a gun. Not one of your big ones, not one of the rifles, but a pistol. And he says, the Smith & Wesson? Yes, the Smith & Wesson. Yeah, that is really interesting. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of him and their relationship, although it does seem to me that he might be characterized by sort of a passivity that goes along with his controllingness. And I'm not sure if I might be overinterpreting this, but she comes and asks something of him and he's willing to give it to her, but he maybe wasn't willing to give her the attention that another human being requires, or to regard her as a whole person. And so he's like, she needs something. I guess I'll let her have it. But
yeah, because I was wondering where it's like with Crown, if it was the bad aspects of Kingly, where it's like kind of just sitting there.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And then people come to you, and then it's like you can, but she's surprised that he says yes.
Yes.
So it's like it feels like in one way he's trying. I don't know. I wasn't sure what to make of him.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of him either. He could, be functioning in the story just as a resource for a big car and a gun, but just as easily she could have had an SUV.
Yeah. And
a gun of her own.
Yeah. And then obviously with Smith and Wesson, Smith, blacksmith, and then
did you look up the etymology of Wesson?
Yeah, that one was a little more confused because it could be a place name.
Yeah.
Or it could be somebody who's from the west side of the town.
Right.
Or it could be somebody who's out like the way it was describing it could be like more like on the outskirts of town, or like a rural farm dweller.
Okay.
So,
well, that really works as an etymology for a pair of gunsmiths, right? Because you have a smith and somebody that's from the edge of things, and you need a Smith and Wesson when you're on the edge of things.
Yeah. The other thing too, you were talking about where Margaret kind of folds her in. Because then she starts talking about. Sorry, I'm going to reference a movie, and I realize you probably haven't seen it.
Yes, this is a classic problem.
Like True Lies with like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's like his wife doesn't realize that he's a special forces agent. She thinks he's a software engineer. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger too, and
as a software engineer.
Yeah, but then there's like, and then so there's this.
I'll code that.
Yeah, exactly. But there's this used car salesman who's pretending he's a special agent to get her interested in him.
Oh my goodness! Like as a flirting technique?
Yes, as a flirting technique, and he's using one of the cars that's for sale on the lot. And I was kind of reminded of this scene here where she's like, oh yeah, it could be Fish and Game, could be ATF,
right?
Like, and just these, which on one hand it is you can't just go randomly release crap in the.
Yes, it could be a federal crime.
Could be, and there's reasons for it. It's like there's the pythons in Florida. They're destroying the Everglades.
Yes.
But then they also have snakeheads, the fish down there but like some of them got out in the waterways, and so but they're predatory fish and they kill all the native fish. And you think about like English sparrows, like. And starlings. Those are not native to the U.S. and they have pushed out a lot of our native songbirds. So
or we could go plants, tree of heaven,
tree of heaven, Bradford pear,
goat heads.
So there's actual teeth behind these laws for a reason, because another thing I was thinking about is the chestnut blight. So we used to have the American chestnuts, and then the Chinese chestnuts, they had a blight on them that the American chestnuts didn't have, their immune system couldn't handle it. And it wiped out like huge sections of the U.S. forests because of that. So, or
the phylloxera, the symbiotic bacteria in the grapevine roots, and they brought it from. So it was endemic to the U.S., and so U.S. grapes can live with it, and it nearly wiped out all of the grapes in Europe because it got transported back across the Atlantic, and then now all of those European grapes are grown on American rootstock because none of the European varietals could survive it. So So there are rules about this for a reason. I think you were mentioning the other day. Yeah, you cannot legally import garlic into the state of Idaho because we have very restrictive state laws.
Yes.
For root vegetables. Because I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Idaho is known for her potatoes, and that's a big deal. You can't just willy-nilly bring stuff in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it was like she's kind of reeling her in. With
Intrigue and excitement.
Yeah, but there is actual like legal repercussions behind this. I mean, I don't know fully what happened to all the people that were releasing those
dog wolf hybrids.
Yeah, but I do know that eventually a lot of these animals were confiscated.
Yep.
And I do know some of the people ended up facing
fines or arrests or something.
Yeah, fines. But then also, I know some of them were sentenced, but I don't know. And I say this as like these are things that I saw in the news,
right.
And then after things went through the legal system, then law enforcement could say things,
right?
But it's like they don't share everything with you because it's like I can guarantee you they didn't catch everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's probably people that were involved that got away, but that's the way the legal system.
To be fair, on the other side, with the releasing of them, there's also significant fines attached to hunting out of season, to poaching of various kinds.
Yes.
And those restrictions exist for a reason as well. You can't keep a healthy breeding population of deer or elk or whatever if people are constantly over hunting them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you have predators introduced and sometimes there's a bounty on predators. So you can get money for shooting various species. And then sometimes there are restrictions because they need to be protected in one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Janet, it seems like pretty rapidly invested. And maybe this is, she's recently divorced. So she's broken off this relationship. And she's taking a couple weeks off work, so she doesn't have any immediate responsibilities. All she's doing is dog sitting for her friends.
Kyoto and Wasabi.
Yeah, Kyoto and Wasabi, a couple of Scotties, which is fun. And I think it's also fun that they are Scotties because Gene Wolfe himself owned at least one Scottie dog named Bobby.
Oh, okay.
So not with a Japanese name, but a Scottie named Bobby.
Yeah.
And he and Bobby didn't always get along, as I understand it. Yeah, and had to walk him and take care of him. So she's got a couple of Scotties. She's dog sitting, and she goes and she borrows the SUV, borrows the gun, loads up Kyoto and Wasabi, and then goes to pick up the wolves.
Yeah, she's off.
Yeah, yeah. And she is, she's sure that this is a good thing to do. She's doing it, but she drives to the address she was given and no one answers the door. So this, it's instantly things feel off.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable. I mean, I feel very uncomfortable. So she drives up to the door, she knocks, no one answers. She knocks some more, she waits around, nothing.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this whole scene is, if this were another story, this would be a scene out of like a horror story where it's like you're doing everything wrong. What are you doing?
Yes. Don't go up to the isolated farmhouse in the middle of winter and knock on the door and then start walking around because, well, surely someone is here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she ends up turning around, driving back down the road. And then there's a guy walking on the side of the road and he's like, come this way. And everything in me is screaming, don't go.
Yep. She lets him in the vehicle.
Yep.
He's out in the snow.
Yes. And then he has her driving essentially off-road.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, surely there's a road here under the snow somewhere.
Uh-huh. And they're just going out to a field.
Yep.
And you're reading this and it's like, no. Yes. I'm picturing myself as her guardian angel, just like shouting in her ear, stop. This is what are you
idea.
doing?
Yeah. But they get out there and he's basically got like a shrub cage going on. She thinks that he's going to load them into a cage and put them in her truck, but he doesn't even have a cage for them. He's like, oh, they'll be chained. It will be fine. And so 3 chained wolves in the back of the SUV.
Uh-huh. So they're wolves that the mother died.
Yes.
And he adopted them.
Yes.
With the intent of them being released.
Right.
But they're not, he kept them in the house, but they're snarling at him.
Yeah, they are not domesticated.
Yeah. And then, it's just because she told Steve that the big dogs, aka the wolves, were going to be in crates in the back.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, now they're just chained in the back of the vehicle.
Yes. Yeah, and I just actually can't imagine the actual chaos and pandemonium of a couple of Scotty dogs and a couple of young wolves in one vehicle, and the snarling and the sniffing that must have been going on.
One thing, the guy's English is a little stilted, but then so he introduces himself. He's Ganstrom.
Yeah.
So Swedish name, which then makes sense because it was like, I've actually known people who were of Swedish descent who I spoke with this rhythm.
Right.
And so depending on what you read, it's like the guy who lived by the stream or the river, or it's like by trees by the river, by the stream. He's an interesting character because he felt the need to care for these wolves that lost their mother.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a contentious relationship because he had them in the house, but then now they're out in this brush pile, and as he's moving them, they're like kind of start snapping and snarling at him, and he just smacks them. Yeah, it's like, knock it off.
Yeah.
And then when she drives off, she realizes that he's chasing after her, and then he's like, "Oh, well, I was going to tell you their names, but there's no point in that because they're wild wolves."
Yes.
And so they're like, he's formed a connection with them.
Yes.
But then he's also kind of going through this, oh, I need to tell you this, but I shouldn't because it doesn't matter. Because he doesn't want her to get attached to him and not like, they need to be released.
They need to transition back out of this liminal, semi-domesticated space into the wild space.
Yeah.
And so, they're losing their names.
Wow. It's almost like a character in our story also lost a name.
Interesting. I wonder how that happened.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But they also have some back and forth because he's worried about, he doesn't know if she's a fed.
Yep.
He's out. The reason he's outside is so he can watch what she's doing. But then he doesn't come back with her because he's like going to clean up.
Yep. The evidence.
Yeah. Essentially the evidence and kind of make it so the wolf doesn't look like the wolves have been there. So, so he's operating on trust, but then there's also some like maybe not as much healthy fear and skepticism in there as he should have.
But some caution.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. And then she drives off to where she's supposed to meet the next person, and she knows where she's supposed to go, who she's supposed to take them to, and she also knows what that person is going to do with them. So she's going to drive to his place, and then he is going to release them into a park at the end of Suicide Road.
Yeah. So Ventress is this guy's name. And so turns out that Ganstrom knows him and is like, oh, yeah, no, he's a good guy.
Yeah. Ventress is a good guy.
Yeah. And Ventress, depending on how you, that one was a little more difficult. So that could be two names. So this could be a personality name, like adventurous, like somebody who like a wanderer, prone to wandering or going out. Or if it goes back to a Latin root, because it could mean like belly or bladder. So it could be somebody. So it could be a characteristic name. I was kind of imagining a guy with a beer belly or a pot belly.
Okay. Yeah.
So could be one of those two.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if it.
Well, we don't get to meet him.
We don't.
So we don't get any confirmation of who he might have been, which is interesting to me because all of the things that could go wrong. She drives for a while. She has to pull over and go and sleep for a little bit. She also goes to a gas station and gets some food and eats a hamburger herself, splits one between the two Scotties, and then gives a hamburger apiece to each of the wolves. But then when she shows up to meet Ventress, he's not there.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's been arrested.
Yes.
So
that's what the neighbors say. And I guess one thing I realize that we haven't talked about this yet.
Oh,
So there's two things. One, she talks with the dogs.
yes.
And the dogs.
Oh, yes. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah. So
Oh, my goodness.
Kyoto and
Wasabi. She carries on conversations with them, and they talk to her.
They talk to her. And then the wolves. So part of the reason why I didn't bring this up earlier, because there's interludes in the opening scene where she hears
wolf howling.
Yeah. But based on the way she's written, because she's kind of nervous and tense and wound up,
right?
You're like, oh, is she on the verge of a nervous breakdown?
Right.
But we're at the point now where it's like she is also somewhat communicating with the wolves, but it's mostly through looks and glances. They're not
right.
But so there is this sense that, oh, maybe she is a servant and maybe she was being called, but she does also have a relationship with the dogs where they speak back and forth.
Yeah, no, it is weird that we didn't talk about that. So because it starts at the very beginning. She hears wolves howling as she's attending the lecture, and she knows that it's communication to her. And then she also just talks about talking to the dogs as though that's a very normal thing to do. This is what I said to them. This is what they said to me.
Yeah.
And that seems, it's part of the strangeness, but it's also written so straight that it doesn't feel odd.
And I think that actually may be one reason why I didn't bring it up, because so I don't own any dogs now, but I've had multiple dogs over my lifetime.
Yeah.
But that's actually the way I interact with the dogs. Mm-hmm. And
you talk to them and you feel like they talk to you. You sense communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And to the point that sometimes other people will be frustrated because I oftentimes would I had one dog, Corgi.
Yes.
Wicked intelligent.
Yes.
But I would say things where it's like one time I told him to stay out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And he got up, turned around, and went and sat outside the kitchen. And it's like, somebody was like, well, how'd you teach him that? And it's like, I never taught him.
I just talked to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one time, so I don't own any cats now, but I've had multiple cats over my life. But I had a cat that was getting older. Mm-hmm. And so I told this Corgi, his name was Lewis, after C.S. Lewis. But I told him.
I'm sorry. Okay, pause. It's after C.S. Lewis, but the name, instead of C.S. Lewis's name, is Clive Staples Lewis. This was Clive Stubby Lewis.
Stubby Lewis.
Because corgis have short legs.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lewis.
So
the corgi.
Yeah. And so I told him to go, because the cat was old, and it was like, oh, go get the cat at the mailbox. Because the cat was in a standoff.
Right.
With another neighbor cat, and I didn't want to. And Lewis knew exactly what I said. He went out to the mailbox, got in between
the two cats. Yep.
The other cat started to rise up and get his hackles up, and he just turned and looked at that cat. And then the cat was like, nope.
I guess I'm not doing this.
Yeah. And then my cat was kind of sitting there. You know how cats are like, don't want to ever acknowledge anything. He was kind of looking the other way. And then,
I didn't see anything happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then Lewis kind of nudged his butt and then brought him back in.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, how did he know how to do that? And it's like, I don't know. I never taught him these things.
No.
But he would come and he would ask for things too. And most of the time it was like, oh, wait, oh, you're thirsty. Oh, you want to go outside.
Right.
Oh, you want this.
But it's not like you trained him to ring a bell to be let outside. It was just he could come and communicate with you through posture, expression, telepathy, who knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it interesting because I don't have as distinctive a stories as those where I just know for sure that is what happened. But in my relationships with animals, I've often had the experience of, I just talk as I do things, or I talk to them, or I explain things to them, or I express gratitude to them. Like I've had chickens, and and when I go get eggs, I would tell them thank you for the eggs, and just talk to them on the way out and on the way back in, and cats and dogs, and feel like I have an ongoing dialogue, not a monologue, but an ongoing dialogue with them, because animals make different kinds of noises. Animals have different kinds of expressions. I know that a lot of people will be like, well, you're anthropomorphizing, you're turning them into, images of your human mind. And I can understand why you might think that. And I can understand that there are people who do that assume that dogs have human desires and human feelings, or cats have human desires or human feelings. But in my experience, they're communicating with me in their very chickeny or cat-like or doggy ways, or horses. I worked with horses for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And horse concerns are so different than human concerns, but you can understand that they have desires. They're not anthropomorphic desires, but they have horsey desires.
Yeah.
Maybe just to stand on your foot, but
yeah. Well, and I think part of what I agree with what you're saying. There are people that are very bad around. There are people that like animals, but they're bad with animals.
Yes.
And most of the time that's because they're thinking of the animal as a moving stuffed animal.
Yeah. I was going to say, you said they like animals, but they're bad around animals. And I think you would also say, I know this because you've said this, that they don't actually like the animal. They like the idea of the animal. And we talked about this already with the image of the wolf, or they want wolves, but what they want is the image of it.
Yeah.
And with pets, that stuffed animal, they want a warm stuffed animal.
Yes.
Not an actual cat, because cats are not stuffed animals.
Cats aren't. And each cat has its own personality.
Yes.
And each dog has its own personality. I dislike horses greatly, but horses each have their own personality.
Yes.
And the more you are attentive to creation around you, the more you can, or let me, if you're uncomfortable with the God creator talk, like, okay, we share common ancestors with these creatures. If we have different personalities, like, why wouldn't these creatures that we share common evolutionary and I think we can phylogenetically bracket that,
right.
Oh, dogs have personalities. That means that there's a whole section of other creatures that we should expect it from.
Right.
And it's like, there's some crows that are outside my window.
Yeah.
And one of the crows will interact with me.
Yeah.
Very distinct personality. I think it's the male. I'm not sure, but he watches me and he'll caw when I come back home. But it's not like come get on my shoulder type thing. But he's there, and I leave him food out.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think most higher animals have personalities, they have preferences, they have desires.
Yes.
That are not just rooted in instinct.
And you say higher animal, I think it's mind all the way down. And so the ways that minds work are different, and the kinds of minds that are available to different creatures are different. But when you were starting to talk about, each cat has its own personality, I realized I'm actually very uncomfortable with the ways that people talk about being a cat person or a dog person. And which also connects to something that I've been a little uncomfortable with about myself for most of my life, but now I think I'm finally putting something together here. I'm not a kid person, and that's an uncomfortable thing to say. Socially, both because I'm a woman, and also because I have children, and also because I spent much of my career as a teacher. And so I'm working with children of various ages at different times. But I'm not a kid person. I never have been a kid person. I'm not a dog person, and I'm not a cat person. I'm also not a horse person, although all of these are creatures that I have had one kind of relationship with or another at a different time. And the thing I have said about not being a kid person is I'm not a kid person, but I love that child because I know that child. I love my children, obviously, I hope, because they're my children, but also because I have an ongoing relationship with them and I love them as the individual human beings they are. So I don't love children. I love a person.
Yeah.
I don't love cats. I don't want a cat, but I have had several relationships with cats where I love this cat and I
Yeah.
care for this cat, and I've gotten to know this cat's personality, and that they interact with me. I had a cat as a child. I also had a cat kind of just end up in my life for various reasons and was part of my life for a couple of years. And I actually actively did not want a cat. But because of the circumstances, it was like, oh yes, no, of course, I will take care of this cat for a while. And then I love that cat, very much so. But it's because of the person, the being. Person might be too far, but I don't know if it's too far that cat was. So it's, people want a cat or a dog. And hopefully for most people, what happens is they acquire a dog and then they develop a relationship with that dog and come to understand it well. But I think that what often happens is people like the image of it, the stuffed animal part that you talked about, but also just the archetypal idea of a dog to take on walks, a dog that will be happy to see me when I come home. You know what I love about a dog is that they just love you unconditionally. These concepts that are shorthand for complex experiences and also falsehoods that lie to us about who we really are.
Yeah. So all that to say,
yes,
Kyoto and Wasabi talk to Janet, and they also have they have two different personalities in the story.
And they communicate with each other. Kyoto bossing Wasabi around.
Yeah, Kyoto definitely seems to be the more in charge, but also protective.
Right.
And trying to keep things on the rails.
Yes.
And Wasabi's more kind of like...
just living life.
Yeah, living life.
Yes.
I'm thinking of... Andy from Parks and Rec.
Yes.
It's like, oh, my office is in this hole now. It's like, it's just kind of like a little more like chaos is going on around Wasabi.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I guess Kyoto means capital.
Yeah.
Wasabi is a plant from Japan.
Yes.
I have a note here. I was talking with a guy about growing wasabi one time, a coworker. And he's like, the way you describe it, this plant is a plant that simultaneously disproves evolution and intelligent design because it's so finicky.
Yes.
It only grows in like certain types of creek habitats.
Right. Which is why most wasabi that you get when you're buying, when you're ordering sushi is green dyed horseradish, not actually wasabi. Yeah.
So I don't know that their names have any bearing on the story.
Right.
Maybe they do. We're in a story that starts out about how names are important. So I'm just trying to...
well, I just think it's hilarious that they're Scotty dogs with Japanese names.
Well,
that's just...
Yeah.
So they go to meet Ventress, Janet drives to meet Ventress, and they get there, and Ventress has been arrested. And she's like, well, I knew where he was supposed to take them, so I guess I'll just do it. And so she goes and asks for directions to Suicide Road.
Yep.
And gets directions.
Yeah, under the pretense that her boyfriend's family member, she can't remember which family member she said was dying.
Yeah, so her boyfriend's out on Suicide Road somewhere, but his mother or his father is dying. Yeah. So she's going to go find him to let him know that mom is sick. Yeah. So she goes and she has to turn at the barns, which I thought was pretty great. There are red barns, and that's where she has to turn, and then go down Suicide Road into this park.
Oh, that rings so true too, because it's like growing up. Okay, so we make a turn at the milk barns. Up by my family's place. In my lifetime, there's never been a milk barn there.
Oh, no.
In my dad's lifetime, there's never been a milk barn there.
Yeah.
The milk barn is a reference point from my grandfather's generation.
Yes.
But it's like the number of times that happens. There's another place where it's Blackburn's house. Blackburn was a African American one-legged Civil War veteran.
Oh my goodness!
That my great great grandfather knew on the other side of the family knew as a child that house, he's been dead for over a century.
Yes, but it's still Blackburn's place. Yeah.
The house hasn't been there for probably at least a century too, but it's just funny how it's like, oh yeah, you turn at the barns.
Yeah, but there are no barns there. Yeah. But this connects back to how names became last names. Like, it seems a little silly to us, like that, John Ford would be named Ford because his ancestor lived near the ford in the river. But it's like, no, that actually is actively how this happens.
Yeah. And now we have a whole line of cars.
Yeah. Because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think about, so I moved around quite a lot as a child, and we developed a number of names for the various places that we'd lived. And very rarely did they have anything to do with a legally named road or an actual location. We didn't name the houses according to the county or the town or the street very often, occasionally. But, we had the ranch house and the moose house and the basement house and, a variety of names.
Yeah.
Yeah. So folk etymologies from the other direction. This is how folk talk about things. Yeah. So she shows up in the park, end of Suicide Road. There's a pullout, and it's getting dramatic here.
It is. So she's gone from, this strange guys telling me to pull off the road, and we're driving through a field. I guess there's a road. And so now she's actually driving out. There's snow.
Yes.
It's the middle of the day.
Yep.
And so she pulls out to this spot at the thing about the suicide point is it's like, well, unless you climb up.
Yes.
It's not Suicide Road's named for the steep drop off you'd have to climb up, which is kind of a joke that they have in there when she's asking for directions. But she now has these 3 wolves who were supposed to be in a cage.
Yep. but they're just chained.
They're just chained. Which
also means you have to reach around their necks to release them.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't explicitly say, but what I'm imagining here is there's a chain with like a snap swivel.
And that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then probably like on both ends, there's a snap swivel. So they're like chained to like a bar or a hand holder in the back.
Yeah.
So
she pulls up, and then is it immediately? I'm sorry, I actually don't remember this super clearly from the story. A park ranger pulls up behind her.
Yeah, she lets the first wolf go.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, so she is immediately having to deal with, there's some kind of officer, and he knows what she's doing.
Yes. So Jerry, sorry, I'm checking.
Looking for his name?
Yeah. His last name's similar to somebody that I knew growing up, so I wanted to make sure I was saying the character's name and not
your acquaintance's name.
Yeah, so it's Jerry Baumgarten.
Yes.
I think is how.
Yeah, or Baumgarten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar thing with the acquaintances. Like
yes. How do we pronounce that?
Yeah, a lot of so his name has connotations of like a garden, but not like a row garden, flower garden, but like a tree garden or an orchard.
Yeah.
Or also possibly somebody that tended a section, a manicured section of forest. So probably somebody who's like either firewood.
He has a very job appropriate name.
Yes.
Just not one that most people would recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he pulls up, and she pulls out the gun.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. This whole section here, because we're very attached to her internal narrative.
Yes,
and with I'm hearing wolf howls, and I'm talking with the dogs, but then we're also hearing her self-doubt.
Yes,
and it's like she's surprised that Steve lends her vehicle. She's surprised that Margaret came and talked to her.
Yes.
Like we're getting all her self-doubt and fears, but then we have Jerry here. And I think it's interesting because, well, she pulls the gun on him.
Immediately. Yeah.
He's actually there he knows what she's doing.
Yes.
He's actually there to give her advice like, hey, maybe you should do this during the night where nobody can see you. But then what I found funny, because on one hand you could read this as like not ringing true, but it actually rings very true to me. He starts flirting with her.
Uh-huh.
And so there's an aspect there of even though we're getting the self-doubt of her narrative, from his perspective, she shows up. It's like, I've got a job to do. She's doing something that he believes is the correct thing.
Right.
And she seems to be fairly assertive, and it's like, I'm going to get this job done.
Yes.
And he's kind of like, oh, this is actually kind of attractive.
Yeah, I like this.
And so it's kind of this weird, like, we're getting the self-doubt from her narrative, but then he's like, hey, I know, are you married? Like, I don't notice that.
Yeah,
he's like looking at her hand, and so on one hand, it seems a little, if we're just trapped in her perspective, it seems a little incongruent. But then if we step back for a moment and kind of think of it from his perspective, because he's a ranger, and so he's out in nature,
right? And he cares about the ecosystem, and it becomes clear that he thinks that releasing the wolves is the right thing to do. So from his perspective, he went to work today, and then we'll assume that she's a hot woman. A hot woman shows up with wolves, a big SUV, a couple of dogs, and a gun, and she is all about getting things done.
Uh-huh. And other than maybe pointing the
gun at him,
point the gun. It's like, here's a very attractive woman,
right?
Which
I don't know. This feels a little bit like your response to Janie in Hero as Werewolf. I like a woman who can get things done.
Maybe this is telling listeners more about me than it's about
than you're comfortable
Jerry.
with. Yeah.
So that exchange there, because we've gone from she's unclear on what she's doing to like going through the character arc of, I got to get these wolves back out to the wild.
Yeah.
So she releases them. One of them kind of snaps at her,
right?
And she cuffs it, just like
our friend, our Swedish friend did.
Yeah. And so she's gone from being timid around them to, because she tells the wolves like, "Hey, remember I fed you hamburgers. Also, I got a gun. Don't make me use it."
Yeah. And I'm taking care of you. So deal.
Yeah.
So she seems to be weirdly coming into her own.
Yeah.
She does some of that posturing thing where she has the gun, and she talks about it more confidently than she has any justification for, because she's just repeating things she heard her husband say about it.
Yeah.
About smoothing out the trigger action. And she says it's called a double action. And he's like, yeah, I know.
Uh-huh.
The ranger is like, yeah, I know, because of course it's a double action. A single action revolver is extremely old fashioned and not very effective. And so she is assertive, and she is coming into competence, but there is still some uncertainty here.
Yeah. Because she tells him to take the wolves out. But then the wolves like snap and snarl at him, and she's like, "Okay, I'll just handle this."
Right, and puts the gun in her pocket and does it.
Yeah, and so because then there's this exchange, like, "Are you gonna get on the radio?
Yeah.
Are you gonna?" And he's like, "No," and he's trying to talk through this because he's like, as a reader, we can tell that he's actually sympathetic to what she's doing.
Right, but it's hard for her to hear that at first.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "No, I'm not going to call it in." And she's like, "But if I shot the radio, you'd have to explain what happened." And he's like, "Exactly. So if you don't trust me, you actually make it worse, because then I'll have to explain damage where I can just pretend nothing happened if you don't do anything."
Yeah. And that's just it's a fun, I don't know. I find this exchange more amusing than maybe I should. So,
well, I don't know about should or not, but it is amusing. It's interesting. Definitely not the social situations that she would be accustomed to, and that strangeness is, it's She's maybe on the back foot a little bit.
Yeah. So there is a conversation there about, well, what if one bites a kid?
Oh yeah.
She's like, she said, he asks her, you're afraid one may bite a kid.
Right.
She nodded, I'm afraid one may kill a kid.
Yes.
How did you know? And so he's like, I worry too. But then he points out that there's bears, mountain lions,
yep,
things that kids already have to worry about. And then he points out that like deer, there's more deer, and you're like, people don't worry about them, but they're dumber and they can trample you.
Yes. And actually more people are hurt by deer than by predatory animals.
Oh yeah. I don't know anybody that's been. Okay, that's an incorrect statement.
Okay, you started to say something
I started
false.
to say anybody that's, and then I was like, what? Oh my great grandfather fought a grizzly bear with a hatchet. So it's like, okay,
as one does.
Yeah, as one does. But I do know somebody that was like had to go to the hospital because of a deer.
I remember this story.
Yeah, he was being an idiot though.
This is true.
And he came across a deer and stuck in a barbed wire fence, and it was during hunting season, and he thought that he could just harvest the deer with his knife.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the deer ended up kicking his butt.
Yeah.
And he had these inch deep deer hooves on his chest where him and the deer were fighting.
Yeah. It's actually wild to me how people can look at a deer and see like a soft creature.
Yeah.
And not a fierce one, because hooves are sharp and antlers are sharper, and deer can bite.
Mm-hmm.
And also just the kicking and the thrashing, like you have no idea the strength of fear and the strength in a wild animal.
Yeah.
Like, you think you're strong and because you playfully wrestled with your brothers, but you have no idea what, the strength of actual terror, the strength of a wild animal. And then, humans are remarkably soft.
Yes.
and wild animals are not.
Yeah.
So,
well, and they'll get up and they'll kick they get up on their hind legs and they'll kick with their front.
Yep. Yeah. Most people I know that have been injured by deer, it's because of hitting them with cars. And that's deadly as well. And deer aren't even the most dangerous. I mean, elk are pretty frightening just because they're so big.
They're big, yeah.
And then there's nothing scarier than an aggressive moose.
Yeah.
From everything I've heard. So
yeah, I've never been around an aggressive moose, but the first time I saw a moose, because you see moose in pictures.
Yes, and you don't realize
how massive they are.
Yes. So I lived in a house that we as a family christened the Moose House.
Mm-hmm.
This is the famous log cabin with a dirt floor from my childhood. So I lived for about 4 years in an old log cabin.
Yep.
And we did have like carpet laid over the dirt, so it wasn't like bare dirt floors, but there was no foundation
somehow
and no flooring. Anyway, so middle of nowhere, and we lived in a meadow between a very large forest and more very large forest, but the very large forest to the east of us also had a river running through it, the Priest River. And every day there was a bull moose that would cross the meadow and go down to the river and then come back. So we had 5-wire barbed wire fence all around this meadow.
Mm-hmm.
This is a meadow that our landlord cut for grass hay every year. And for a while we ran some cows there. So it was well fenced, and the moose just stepped over the fence. He didn't jump. Yeah. He just walked over the fence.
Uh-huh.
And so you've got an animal that's bigger than a cow but it's on stilts.
Yeah.
And I like just the weight, the mass of that creature, and then in subsequent hunting seasons, no one shot our pet moose. Our resident moose, Bullwinkle. But we had some friends that pulled moose tags and shot moose, and then it was a winch to get the moose into the back of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then another winch to get the moose hanging in a tree. And then I was like 13, 14 and helped butcher out a moose. And the first time we butchered out a moose, it took us 8 hours. And there were 4 of us working on it. I mean, it's a big job. So we were faster the second time. The second time was only like 4 hours, but also we left more of it as whole roasts and cut fewer steaks.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They're massive.
So much meat.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the hunter's perspective. As a living animal, they're so large. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So the conversation about the danger of animals, you don't read about Canadian children being ripped to pieces by wolves, and deer are more dangerous.
And that's the thing. Like, yeah, the Canadian children. I was trying to remember the folk singer. She was a young gal. It's probably been 20 years ago now. But the coyotes killed her back east somewhere.
Oh, wow.
But it turns out they were those, they were like a dog, coyote hybrids, I think is what it, but she was a young folk singer. I want to say she was just in her 20s, but, wolves generally in North America don't, I mean, they have attacked people,
right?
But it's like generally like they don't go after people.
Right.
So, but there you have the coyote dog hybrid, like they don't have the fear of people. Sorry, I just was thinking about that, and I can't remember the gal's name.
Yeah.
So, but I want to say it was like New York that it happened.
Okay.
But like I said, it's been like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and I mean, we've actually kind of jokingly talked about this at different times, which maybe this is not a great thing to.
Okay, now I'm worried about what you're ready to say.
Yeah. But so we live in a world where we as human beings don't suffer under the pressure of predatory animals.
Yes.
We don't have to fear things that especially our very distant ancestors, but even some of our more immediate ancestors had to fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that has changed human society a lot, and not all in good ways. I think we can all agree that we're glad that neither any of us or our siblings or our children were torn apart by wild animals.
Mm-hmm.
However, the health and well-being of our society has definitely suffered from the lack of significant pressures on us.
Yeah.
And so, this is just, joking, a little dark. You can write into the show if you're upset by this, but wolfnarrators@gmail.com for complaints. Anyway, you'll be walking down, the path by the river or just down a sidewalk, and someone is, walking along completely oblivious to the world around them. Mm-hmm. They have earbuds in, so they have no auditory input from the world around them. They have their head down. Maybe they're looking at their phone, or they're just locked into the artificial world that they're piping into their senses via an electronic. And one or the other of us, I won't say who, will say something about, you can tell there are no saber-toothed tigers around anymore.
Yeah, that's... She's referring to me.
Yes.
I often make the joke about like, well, thank goodness we killed off all the saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a wish for danger's sake. And it's not a wish for people to be harmed, but it is a wish for the senses and alertness and care that would be required by a more dangerous world. And so how to navigate that, how to manage that. I actually have been stalked by a mountain lion before.
Yeah, so have I.
Yeah, and that's a very unsettling, very frightening experience. But also, I, have spent the rest of my life maybe a little bit more alert for having had that experience.
I don't know about you, but the thing with me, like, I was walking along, and now that I'm telling the story, this has actually happened on multiple occasions.
Yeah,
but I was hearing. Because at least in my experience, they try to match your step.
Yeah.
And so I was hearing something that was slightly, I couldn't pinpoint it.
Yeah.
But it sounded off because it wasn't my step.
Yep.
And then you stop, and then sometimes you hear like another step or the start of a step.
Yep.
And
or a brush or something. So my experience was in the snow.
Oh, okay.
So extra auditory input.
Mm-hmm.
And I was out with my dog. So there were my steps and then the dog's steps and then something else.
Yeah.
And, it was nothing so crude as, a fully sounded step.
Yeah.
Or what you would get if you were, watching a nature film and they had the boom mic out there, or they added special effects or something where you could hear the crunch of that big paw down into the frost or whatever.
Yeah.
But my experience of it was that there were eyes on me.
Yes.
And I could feel them, and they were not, this was not a person. It just, I was being watched, and it was frightening. And I imagine this might have something to do with, subconscious processing the sound, some kind of subsonic rumbling as the cat is starting to growl or express themselves in some way.
Yeah.
And my subconscious processing it, and also just, some mystical woo-woo. I don't know what it is, but I felt myself being hunted. I felt myself prey, and was absolutely abjectly terrified almost instantaneously. And fortunately, I had the flight response, not the freeze response in that situation. And I also had my dog with me.
Yeah.
Who I think as an anchor point helped keep me from freezing up. And yeah, I got to safety. So yeah. I was eaten, and I'm dead, and I'm a ghost now talking to you. No. Yeah. Okay. We are continuing apace here, and probably need to finish up the last page or so of the story.
Yes.
Because he flirts with her, and she doesn't really seem to be picking up on it. He tells her his name. And she says, "In the wild woods, we wolves have no names," which I love.
Yes, because she's telling him her name.
Yes.
But then she's not.
But she's not. And she gets into her car, and she pulls away, and she watches him in the mirror, and he does not run for his car or his radio. So it seems like he's letting her get away.
Yeah.
And then she has a supernatural encounter.
Yeah. I have questions for you about this, but
okay.
Not entirely.
Go for it.
Because, sorry, I'm trying to find my note here.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay. It's right here. So then suddenly and incredibly, an impossibly tall man in snowy white with outstretched arms and the finest smile she had ever seen. She slammed on the brakes so hard that the expedition nearly skidded off into the ditch. In the blinking of an eye, the man in white was gone. Where he had stood, 3 snowmobiles flashed across the road.
Uh-huh.
So one, snowmobilers are jackasses, but we all know that.
Math checks out.
Yeah. But 2, we have a supernatural experience. So a man in white, I guess, how did you read this?
Oh, I read it 2 ways.
I read it 2 ways too. Now I'm curious which 2 ways
Well, I read angel. That guardian angel that was yelling in her ear earlier.
Yeah.
I also read it Yeti. So.
Oh, okay.
The tall and white read, cryptozoological. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
But he disappeared. So that.
Well, yeah, and there are no footprints.
Yep.
So there's only the track of the snowmobile.
So I first thought, oh wait, did she encounter, a white Sasquatch? But then immediately, okay, no tracks and disappeared quickly. I think it's an angel.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. My 2 readings were, it was either Odin or Jesus.
Oh, okay. Well, see, we did totally different things.
Yeah. And I had reasons for that, because we haven't talked about
this is so much better than, go for this.
Well, okay. So I was tying this back into her name is Wolfe.
Yes. Last name,
Wolfer. The reason why because servant of wolves, but then you go back and look where so the reason why that surname was because Odin considered wolves sacred. But then I was also tying in my assumption here is Odin is real. My second assumption is Jesus is real. I guess I should explicitly state that. But there's another section, and now that I'm talking, I can't remember where this is from, but it's like, maybe this is Castle View. where they're talking about the goddess, and they say that eventually she will, it's like, yes, she's a goddess, but eventually she'll become more of a proper, like, going into the deity as she plays that role. And so part of me was like, okay, well, the only reason wolves are sacred to Odin is because, and, now I'm betraying let me put my Christian cards on the deck, but Odin would be a created being who answers to Jesus.
Yes.
And so then, as much as Odin is a god, is as he's being a steward of what is given to him, which in this case would be the wolves. So now I kind of approach that because that is a theme that Wolfe toys around with a lot.
Yes.
But then it doesn't say, then that part, I kind of argued myself out of it because it's like, well, it doesn't say he only had one eye.
Right, and there's not a crow or something.
Yeah. And so it talks about the smile.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is because the story is bookended by the Kipling poem.
Yes.
Which we haven't talked about.
No, we haven't mentioned that yet at all.
Because then she says a prayer.
Yeah.
Because she kneels in the snow and she says, thank you very much, very much. It was a pleasure, Lord, capital L, a pleasure and an honor to look after your dogs, even if it was only for a day. I'd be happy to do it again anytime. Which then part of me is like, well, there's some ambiguity in there too, which from the perspective of somebody who may not, like, who is she addressing as Lord? Is it Jesus or is it Odin?
Right.
And ultimately, like,
well, and I think this also fits with an angel.
Yes. No.
Interpretation.
I agree with you.
You can call an angel Lord.
Yes.
It's a title of honor, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I found that scene unexpected, which I'm curious about because, like, why do I find it unexpected, and what does that tell me about why it's there?
So, I think in one reason why we find it unexpected is because we expect certain things from fiction. Like it signals, like, and this is kind of like in the worst things, it devolves into tropes and and becomes genre in the worst sense of genre.
Right.
Wolfe often complained. So Free Live Free. No, he complained that he had a hard time with it because the publishers, editors were like, but you have a witch and a private eye in here. It's like, what, like, pick a lane. And he's like, and his response was, go grab a phone book. You can call a witch from the phone book. You can call a private eye from the phone book.
Yeah.
Our real world has witches and private eyes in it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and I feel like that's probably where it comes across as unexpected, because there's a real encounter here, but we don't. The problem is it's also an encounter. It's a metatextual encounter.
Yeah,
is that what it intrudes into our reality?
Right.
The way.
Well, no, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. It's like your genre fiction can have more things in it than your genre philosophy allows, because we're trying to get the world in here.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it seems decisive for her in that she, instead of going home, it seems like she's not going to head home and resume her life.
Yeah.
She's going to head off to Texas.
Yep.
And presumably continue this wolf helping life.
Mm-hmm. And in that sense, I don't think that it matters if it was an angel or Odin or Jesus. I don't think it matters who she was addressing as Lord, because ultimately they're all, let me rephrase this. Because of our Protestant heritage in the U.S., I think we tend to think of it as God and then everything else is flat.
Right.
It's a very flattened hierarchy.
Right.
But Odin is a god in the sense that if he is caring for the wolves, he is caring for a task that God to an extent, also tasked mankind with.
Right. And is part of our, elevation.
Yeah. And then an angel reminding, one, protecting, but then also protecting on a mission that she's on to be a steward of creation, is also fulfilling his role. And so ultimately, they're all creative beings interlocking in a way, and they are pointing back to God.
And Lewis talks about this in the opening to, I think it's in the opening to Paralandra, the second book of the Cosmic Trilogy, where he says one tends to think in one mood of aliens and extraterrestrial beings, and in another mood of angels and spiritual powers, and conflating the two, putting the two together is very uncomfortable. It's very disconcerting. And one tends to think in one mood of the false gods of the pagans, and in another mood of the servants of, the angelic servants of the one true God. And putting the two together is uncomfortable for a lot of, you said American Protestants, and very much so. It's like, oh, that is a lie, or that is a false being, or that is a demonic being, not understanding that there might be possibilities here beyond that binary.
So, and then we have the Kipling. So she's going to Texas.
Yeah.
And Kyoto and Wasabi are happy.
Yeah.
So they're
good with that.
Yeah. So, and she still has time from being on vacation.
Yeah.
So then we bookend with the
Kipling poem.
Yeah. So let me go back to the beginning. So we get the first part of the poem.
Right.
She dropped the bar, she shot the bolt, she fed the fire anew, for she heard a whimper under the sill, and a great gray paw came through. So we get the perspective of a woman in a house.
Yes. And then the poem closes, so there's the rest of the poem includes some, meditations on the wild.
Yeah.
But the close is, she loosed the bar, she slid the bolt, she opened the door anon, and a gray bitch wolf came out of the dark and fawned on the only son.
Yeah. So then we get a bit of Virgin Mary imagery.
Yes.
Which I think Kipling was also pulling on Eve imagery, but Eve in like a pre-fallen Eve.
Yes.
So then you get the sense of, you see this on church doors in Europe where Eve's fall on one side, but then Mary restoring.
Yes.
It's like the restoration of pre-fallen Eve.
Right.
So I think we get the merging of that in there in the poem, or maybe I'm just totally way off, but so then it's like fawn on the only son, and son is capitalized through here.
Yes. Yeah.
So you get the wolf as a creative being, as a subject in creation, is going to, much like the ox and the lamb at the manger.
Yeah.
Like the wolf is coming to pay its respects to capital O and only, and capital S, son. So it's only son.
Yeah.
So
well, and it's interesting because this poem also fits into the Mowgli Jungle Book mythos. It's a part of the larger cycle there. So sort of the spiritual imagery here, it also is part of his, wild child raised by the animals, mythology. Yeah. And Mowgli's isolation.
Yeah. And there's a second part that I kind of wanted to bring up here. And if I'm meandering off too much, you can stop me. But
okay.
Well, because I think that there's the spiritual encounter at the end,
right?
But then I think there's also a bit of place about ecology, and because we tend to view domestication of the dog as an event, but then when you actually go back and read stuff about it, and I think that this is part of Wolfe's argument, if you view humanity and the dog as a co-evolutionary species,
yes,
so they as a species complex,
right? It's not about what we did to the dog; it's about what the dog and us did to each other.
Yeah,
in a recursive relationship.
Yeah, and I have no evidence that Wolfe read any of these things, but it comes up enough because there's some of the conversation is like, well, with the morality that we see in like chimpanzee morality, not very good.
Maybe we don't want that.
Yeah, people talk there for a while. There was like, the bonobos are so peaceful. The pygmy chimpanzees, no, their stress levels
Their
are
cortisol
actually higher.
Yeah,
it's like great ape morality and like clan, like connection.
Yeah,
very fragile.
Yes,
and so like one of the questions is, well, where do we get this from? And human bonds, human morality, human ethics is actually much closer to canine pack ethics. And so there's an argument there where it's like, oh, well, maybe.
Well, and this, I do just need to meander even further here, but when we're talking about pack ethics, we're talking about actual pack ethics, not the misunderstanding of pack ethics that's in popular culture that believes in the whole alpha wolf dominance hierarchy thing, which is bad research that has been so thoroughly debunked. It shouldn't be in public consciousness anymore, but it still is. So actual pack behavior.
Yeah, actual pack behavior.
Right. Where you have a complex network of relationships and there is a structure, but there's not a dominance hierarchy.
Yeah. So, and then there's like wolves will take, well, not just wolves, but like Cape hunting dogs and like canines with pack structure. They will take care of members that are not genetically related to them.
Yes.
They will bring them into the pack. They will care for sick and wounded. They will take food back to them.
Yes.
If somebody is on guard duty at the den, they don't go without food. They will bring back food. And so but then like pack hierarchy extends beyond species too. So there's like this whole, and I look at this and a part of me is like, I had those medieval Book of Beasts where it's like, oh, like that seems so foreign to us, where it's like, cause you read about the weasel and the weasel gives birth from its mouth. And it's like, wait, what is that? Oh, that's about gossip. And then wait, a hyena has what? There's like there's a like, what is it? The pebble that then you put it under your tongue and you can prophesy. But wait, why? And like these Book of Beasts seem so foreign to us, but it's pulling on this. If every created being is in some way like reflects an aspect of the creator, you can morally look out at every creature and there's something from it that you can take that will tell you about how you should be acting or how you should not be acting, because it's all a reflection of God, the creator. And so then I'm sitting here like, oh, this co-evolutionary aspect of wolves and humans is just the Book of Beasts in a different, it's a modern updating of it in a way that's more palatable to like, because it's like we look at the Book of Beasts and it's like, this seems weird and foreign and we don't view the world this way anymore.
Right.
But we do view the world in natural selection and pressures and cooperating actually helps and this type of thing. But there's an aspect of it in there where it's like bringing people back to awareness of ecology, and it's good that the wolves will be here.
Right.
And she's interacting with people that believe this, and even people that are like, there's a federal agent who's like, no, I agree with what you're doing, and I'm not going and calling on that radio.
Right.
And so there's a morality that is above the law as in positive law, like these are the laws of the land, but then the wolves are teaching her that. Yeah. And it's there in the Jungle Book, but it's also there in scientific literature.
Yeah. No, it is. And I think it's there in human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a divine encounter at the end. Mm-hmm. We also have her learning from the wolves, and then we have it bookended.
Yeah, her learning from the wolves, but also this sort of affirmation that her relationship with the dogs was a part of that living reality before she knew it, before she understood it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess with Kipling, I looked up, I was like, oh, well, is it important what his surname means? I couldn't find anything like,
I don't know. Yeah. I didn't look.
Well, there's a number of things. It was like, oh, somebody who processes salmon. And it's like, oh, okay. Somebody who like it could be a place name. I couldn't find what I thought was good information about it. So then I'm like, well, I don't know. Well, because the reason I bring that up is as we've looked through things, a lot of times Wolfe will be pointing to something that like a few lines above where he's quoting, or it's a theme that
something connected to it.
Yeah. And I couldn't quite find that. So.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I know he has been influenced by Kipling. And many of his works.
Yeah. So. I think this is probably the 5th or 6th work that we've done.
And we've barely touched anything. Yeah. So. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that this story was originally included in the Wild Women anthology, which includes a lot of other well-known authors like Atwood and Le Guin, and just, sort of that tying back into that earlier fragment of conversation about Wolfe being criticized for his writing of or treatment of women. But this was an anthology of stories about women in the wild, and it, I haven't read the collection, but seems like the editor at least thought it fit right in.
I haven't read the collection either. So.
Yeah, well, we should probably get on that. More things to read.
Well, yeah.
Well, if we have no more thoughts or questions or side quests or anything, the Unreliable Narrators are Amanda Patchen and Brent Towell. And as Gene Wolfe said, in his new realm where time sang like a brook, the new president picked himself up and stood stock still to listen. The trees in a wood far away were barking. On the cliff that rose behind him, a mountain ram winded its horns.